Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to join us for the webinar, How to Engage with Your Students in STEAM Subjects. Now I'm going to pass it over to our main presenter, Dennis, and let him introduce himself as well.
Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Again, my name is Dennis, and I am the CEO of Easy Robot and the founder of a company called Robots.Education. I've been teaching robotics and coding to kids for 8 years now. I spend a lot of time in non-COVID times flying around the world in airplanes to speak at educational conferences about the impact that robotics and AI is going to have on the workforce and why it's critically important that we give as many kids as we can digital literacies, robotics, 3D printing, coding, understanding artificial intelligence. And so I did a presentation recently with Nasco on this topic. If you guys are interested, you should be able to find that through their system. And that really points to a scenario where, I guess just a real quick summary of that presentation. In the coming decade, the forecast is that robotics and AI will eliminate up to between 20 and 40% of jobs, which is 30 to 60 million people across the USA losing their employment to these technologies. And it's not job loss, it's job elimination. And so really what we're going to see is a time of great transition in the workplace, where we're going to see a significant population of people losing their jobs that are low technical skill. At the same time, a huge number of new jobs that are high technical skill. And we're going to see the transition of a whole lot of jobs that were not previously high tech, but were having high tech skills is going to put your resume on the top of the pile, including things like teaching and fashion design, a bunch of unknown careers or careers where you wouldn't think that, you wouldn't classify them as high tech typically. So if you haven't seen that presentation already, I would recommend watching it. It really is kind of paradigm changing in how we look at the workplace and what we have to do to prepare our students. So 8 years ago, I had somebody working for me that was building robots in his spare time, and he happened to develop this product here. And as he was developing it, I was like, wow, that's an incredible product. So I started showing it to educators, and they were really impressed by the capabilities of what the product could do and with the impact that it had on kids. So I started saying to this guy, you should take this product into education, but he was so busy doing R&D that's where he wanted to focus his time. So I started pushing it into education a little bit for him. And what I discovered was we were able to engage a massive number of kids, a much, much higher percentage than what the other companies were achieving. And I started to understand that the educators were looking at robotics and artificial intelligence and coding as an industry and not really understanding that these technologies will lay across all industries. And so I just want to quickly draw a graph here for you guys, or a bell curve that shows one of the challenges that I think we really have with regards to STEM education, and in particular, the technical and engineering aspect of that. So I'm going to talk just briefly to the high school and middle school levels, but this information is pertinent across all levels. But now when I fly around to these conferences, I've talked to 20,000 educators, and I always verify these statistics to make sure they're still current. So as of the start of COVID, these numbers were accurate. What we know is robotics and AI is going to impact virtually all industries, and anybody who has robotics, coding, and AI literacy is going to have a significant advantage. And so it really comes down to wanting to get as many kids as possible learning this. So when I talk to teachers that were teaching robotics at the high school level, I would always ask them, how many kids do you have in your program? And from 20,000 educators, here's what I found. And the average number of kids that are interested in learning robotics at the high school level is about 3% of boys, 0.3% of kids. And now here's the real challenge, is this is my bell curve of engineering mindedness. The children that are interested in learning robotics the way it's traditionally taught are always at the high end of the engineering mindedness curve. But when you understand the impact that robotics and AI is going to have on the workforce, it's going to first significantly impact the jobs that are not engineering-minded jobs, right? So things like transportation, retail, hospitality sector, those are the careers that are going to be impacted most heavily first. And what we find is that the high school graduates that typically take those types of programs, they live on this side of the bell curve, right? So here's your most engineering-minded kids, here's your least engineering-minded kids. And the real challenge that we face is we need to reach the whole spectrum of kids with our robotics education, coding, AI, 3D printing, strong math, physics, all of these things, good problem-solving skills. But the way we're teaching it right now, we're only hitting the most engineering-minded kids. So at the middle school level, this gets a little bit bigger. It hits between 5% to 15% of kids. Again, the most engineering-minded kids. And these are in schools where they're offering the programs and where they're offering a wide enough range of programs where kids aren't taking it because there's nothing else to take. So that's how many kids on average are interested in learning robotics right now. Now, to put these numbers at the high school level into perspective, 3% is 30 boys out of 1,000, 0.3%, 3 girls out of 1,000. So we're in the midst of what I believe is the largest workforce transition in the history of man. 3 girls out of 1,000 are interested in learning it the way it's being taught. Now, the way we teach it at the high school level, we can consistently get 25% to 45% of kids, boys and girls, which is a dramatic increase. At the middle school level, I'm hitting 90% engagement. So I'll go into a presentation at a school, and I've presented robotics to more than 18,000 kids from grade 4 up through university, from inner city Los Angeles to New Jersey to the prairies in Canada, down to Florida, all the way down to Australia. These stats prove out basically everywhere. So what I want to do is talk to you about how I can get 90% of middle schoolers interested in learning robotics, 25 to 45% of high school kids interested in learning it. At the elementary school level, we get 98%. Elementary is easier with all products, to be fair, because children in elementary still have a high degree of confidence and curiosity, and they don't have the same social pressures that we see up here. Most of the kids that aren't taking robotics or coding up here, firstly, they don't find it's interesting the way it's being taught, but secondly, and this is really important, they lack the confidence. And so how do we get confidence to these kids that don't view themselves this way? And what we have done is we've used this product, and this is ultimately, I mentioned I'm the CEO of this company. This is why I became CEO of this company, because we were getting these kind of results, and I realized how important it was. So what I wanted to do was to try to bring this education to as many kids as possible. Right? I was previously working as an educational reseller, selling a wide range of different technology, and now I'm focused on this because what I have found is from grade 4 up through university, this product seems to be able to reach kids in a different way. So what I like to do is just show you what I do to get the kids excited. I mentioned that I've presented to 18,000 kids. So I want to talk about those presentations, and I'll share my screen. I'll show you guys what I'm doing, how I'm getting that engagement, and the little hooks and tricks that I use to increase the engagement numbers. And now, if I'm, I'll reference middle school again. At high school, the numbers are like it's a little bit harder, a little bit less engagement, and in elementary higher. But typically speaking, if I'm talking to 60 kids, at the beginning of my presentation, I'll say, okay, who here thinks you might work with robots in the future? And usually 3 or 4 kids will put their hand up. And so, that's not a really great number. So what I try to do is I try to change that number and get as many as we can. And what I'll do then is I'll start talking about, the first thing is, why is this information relevant to them? Why should they care? Most kids have a vision of what robotics is. They think it's complex. They think it's gross. It's not for them. And so they self-select themselves out of taking programs. So I want them to understand why it's critically important. So I talk to them about all the different careers and how it will impact it. You know, if you want to get involved in the environment, robotics is going to be huge in cleaning up the environment. Medicine, you know, being able to do surgery from distance. Like I could be a doctor in Canada and I could be operating on a patient in New York City using robotics and 5G networks. If we're going to go into space, that's robotics. If we're going to go into the ocean, robotics. You know, it doesn't matter what industry you want to be in, firefighting, fashion design, teaching, like there's just so many ways that you're advantaged if you have this education. I also let the kids know that if they understand this, they'll make between $30,000 and $50,000 more per year. I'm like, who here wants a fancy car? Who wants a swimming pool, right? So things that the kids are relevant to the kids. So then I get them to go, okay, this is maybe relevant information. But what I know is they're still not super engaged. They're going, okay, you know, yeah, we've heard this stuff before. So I'm like, okay, I've got, you know, 45 minutes left in the presentation. If you guys want, I can keep talking about robotics, or if you want, I can show you what this robot can do. Everybody wants to see what the robot can do. So now I'm just going to connect to my robot. They connect with Wi-Fi. Normally, I would have this done before I start the presentation in a classroom setting, because I don't want anything that slows down my presentation with the kids. I don't want to give them even a minute to lose their attention. But so I said, like, who wants to see what the robot can do? All the kids want to see it, and I know they will. It's a loaded question. So I turn to the robot and I say, JD, show me how strong you are. JD, show me how strong you are. And when I do this in a classroom full of kids, you know, the sound of all of the chairs moving, the kids rustling and stuff, you hear that sound and all the kids, the energy level goes way up. And the kids are, you know, kind of craning to look around the person in front of them and stuff, because everyone's like, holy cow, that robot just responded to this guy's voice. So I'll say, JD, what else can you do? JD, what else can you do? I guess I need to talk louder because he's not hearing me the first time on the speech recognition, but that's okay. In a classroom setting, again, this stuff would be tested before I do the presentation. But so now the kids are like, holy cow, the robot did a headstand. So I'll say things like this. You know, I want the teachers to tell me if the students are, you know, listen this well. JD, take a seat. Now, this is one of my favorite things to do at the middle school level, because a lot of times when I do this, it's kind of a litmus test for how engaged are the girls. Because a lot of times when they see the robot just sitting there like that, they'll make the sound on. And if they make that sound, I know I've got them for sure. If they don't make it, it doesn't mean I don't have them. But if I hear that sound, I'm like, okay, they're emotionally invested now. And that's a big thing of what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to get them not just intellectually connected to the robot. I want that emotional engagement. And the fact that I can talk to the robot and it listens is a huge part of that. JD, stand back up. And then what I'll say to the kids is, you know, JD's a young robot, you know, he's not really sure what he is yet. I won't say that to the high school kids, because the high school kids know that's not true. But for the middle school or younger kids, I'll say, you know, it's kind of fun. So I'll say, he's not really sure what he is. Let's ask him a question, see if he knows what he is. JD, are you a bird? And now, again, part of what I'm doing here is showmanship when I'm working with the kids. You know, I could have said, JD, do push-ups. That could have been my activation phrase, and the robot would do push-ups. And that's still good because the robot's understanding what I'm saying. But because I'm saying, you know, JD, show me how strong you are, and he's giving me a cheeky response by doing push-ups. I'm saying, you know, are you a bird? And he's flapping his arms and singing, I believe I can fly. I'm giving the robot personality. And that's an important part of this. When we're teaching robotics, what we love to do is to have the kids dream about the robot, to personalize the robot, and to personalize their learning experience with the robot. We want them to have an emotional connection with the robot in a way that they want to make it better. The same way they've got an emotional connection to games like Minecraft or any, Dungeons and Dragons role player type game where you create a character and then you keep playing because you want your character to get better and to succeed. The kids will feel the same way about their robot when they're able to communicate with it. And certainly this is really true with the humanoid form. Like when we're doing presentations, if we use something like a rover, even though it's doing all of the same functions, the results are not as great, right? Just the engagement level isn't quite as high. I want to show you this next one. It was programmed by an 8-year-old girl. And I will tell the kids that as well, because I want the girls to go, hey, I can do this. And I want them to understand, man, an 8-year-old could do this. JD, can you sing happy birthday? Okay, so now I've got the kids really engaged. They're putting their hands up. They're asking questions. Hey, can the robot do a dance? I'll say yes, he can. If we have time at the end of the class, I'll get them to do a dance for you. And so I've got them wanting more. And they'll say, can the robot dab, or can it do the floss, or whatever the popular trending thing is for kids at that point in time. And I'll say the robot's not programmed to do those things, but you could program it to do that if you wanted to. Right, so now they're engaged by the robot, and then I'm like, okay, we still got 40 minutes left, or 45 minutes, whatever the time is. Do you guys want to volunteer to program the robot? And the answer is always yes. At the elementary school level, man, the kids can't put their hands up fast enough. At the middle school level, they're still very excited. High school, it's a tougher pull, certainly, and definitely initially, it's hard to get the first high school kids up. Depending on the middle school, it can be hard to get, and the dynamics between the kids, it can be hard to get the first middle school kids up. But, I'll say things like, who wants to earn $30,000 to $50,000 more? Like learning robotics is going to help you do that. I've done this with 18,000 kids. 100% of people have success. So whoever comes up, you're not going to fail. Be confident. Come on up and stuff. And I'll get them up eventually with the high school level. Elementary, the kids are jumping up. Like so much so that they got their hands up like this in the middle of the presentation. And I'm like, do you have to go to the bathroom? And they're like, look at me like I'm crazy. Like, no, I want to volunteer, right? So super engaging this way. But then here's something that we do that's really important. We get the kids up to volunteer to program the robot. And what I'm doing is I'm showing the software on a screen behind me. And what I say is the first student is going to volunteer to program this robot to wave. Now, everybody has to watch what's happening on this screen because whoever comes next is going to build upon the first student's work. So everybody has to pay attention here. And the first student will come up and they'll program the robot to wave. And I'll show you guys how to do this in a second with the software, but I just want to run through what the whole presentation looks like. They'll program the robot to wave. And at the, once they're done, I'll give them a clap. Everybody claps for them. And I say, when you get home and your parents say, how was your day? You say like, awesome, I'm so powerful, I programmed a humanoid robot, right? And then the kids are like, wow, this is pretty cool. It takes about 3 minutes to program this robot to wave. And then what I do, again, this is so important, is I say to all the kids, okay, you all saw how that was done. Who here could program this robot to wave? And, all the kids will put their hand up. I'm like, okay, so everybody here could do that? Okay, good. And I keep asking them this at each step because I want them to verbally or physically acknowledge, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. Because a big part of the problem is everybody thinks they can't do it. Think it's tough and they think it's gross, right? So we need to, in 1 hour, get them to go, yes, I can do this, and it looks fun. Okay, so the first student has come up, they've got the robot waving. I say, okay, I need another volunteer. Somebody else comes up and I'm like, your job is to make the robot talk while waving. So they'll type in a phrase for the robot to say, the robot will wave and he'll say that phrase. And I'll say again to the kids, who could have done that? Everybody puts their hand up. Okay. Then the next student will come up that will record their voice and it will come out the robot the same way as the happy birthday song, right? We recorded that girl's voice and then it came out the robot when she programmed the actions. And so then now the robot's waving and it's got a student's voice, which is really cool. And it's, it's really engaging and inspiring for the kids. The next one I do, I just love. I get another volunteer up. And that person's job is to program the robot to recognize their voice. Now, what I say to them is, imagine if you had 15 robots in the class and they were all named JD. What would happen if I said, JD, walk forward? The kids are like, well, all the robots would walk forward. I'm like, right. So I would say that, and your robot would go and walk off the desk. So all the robots can't have the same name. It's like us, they all have to have their own name. And so I say to the student that's there, if this was your robot, what would its name be? And then usually that student is put on the spot and they're frozen because the field of options are this big and they don't want to come up with a name that's going to get them teased or it's going to be a bad name. Sometimes if you've got a confident student, they'll have a name right away. Either way, I say, even if they start typing right away, I'm like, just wait a second. Let's give everybody a chance to, sorry, I got a frog in my throat. Let's give everybody a chance to, throw out a name here. So I'll ask the 60 or 70 kids, if this was your robot, what would its name be? And I'm like, just blurt it out. And I don't want the kids being polite about this. I want them to be enthusiastic. So they start yelling out names. Ultimately, one name gets chosen. And so there's 60 people there. One person is happy. 59 are like, oh, I totally would have called that Swagbot. And he would have been the most powerful robot ever. And I would have programmed him to do the dab. And so they're disappointed that the robot doesn't have their name. Now, that's really powerful and important because at the end of the class, if I'm just like, who wants to learn robotics? Everybody, or a significant portion. Why? Because they want to make Swagbot. It's not because they want to learn engineering. The engineering shouldn't be the goal. There should be a goal that is cool and awesome, and the engineering is what you have to learn to get to the goal. And when we structure our learning like that, the kids will learn everything to get there, right? I've never had to teach my kids how to play Fortnite. They just will research that for hours online because they care about the outcome. So what we have to do is give the kids a really cool outcome, and then we teach them the process to get to that outcome. So anyway, so all the kids now, and I know that a lot of you already, like you guys know that, but it doesn't always show up in how we're teaching technology. I think a lot of times the challenge is when we're teaching robotics over here, and this education, I'm not trying to dismiss this education. It's important that we give these kids the highest level education possible and push those kids through the roof, right? That's critically important as well. Just the challenge is we need to make sure we're not leaving all these kids out because that's economically and societally really, really important. Okay, so we've got the kids now. They've programmed the robot to respond to their voice, which is so cool and engaging. The next thing I get the kids to do is they will program this robot to track a color. So the robot's moving its head. I'm moving a red ball in front of the robot and it's following it. And then after that, the last thing I typically get them to do is to program the robot to recognize an object. And that object is a student's face and the robot will greet that student by name. I guess if there's enough time, I'll also get them to program a Wii remote. So the robot will respond kinesthetically to their movements. They lift their arm and the robot will mimic it, right? So, and you could put on virtual reality glasses if you want. So you move your head, the robot moves its head, and you're seeing what the robot sees. We don't typically have time to do that in 1 hour, but I let the kids know they could do that. So now here we are, we're 40 minutes into the class, and the kids have programmed all of those things, having never seen the platform before. And what they're learning is robotics and coding isn't hard, it's kind of easy. And hey, this is kind of fun. But a really important part is all the way through the process, I kept asking them, who here could have done that? Who here could have done that? And all the way through, they're all saying that they could. So at the end of the presentation, I say, okay, so you all now are saying you could have programmed this robot to do all the things we've seen here today. And the kids will all say, yeah. And I'll say, okay, I want to show you guys a video. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. So bear with me for a quarter second. Okay, pause showing my screen. Okay, so in Siri, you guys can see my screen.
Yep, Jordan, we can see it, Dennis.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so I'll show them this video, and they will see this on the screen behind me. So it's a big screen. So here's what the kids see.
Excuse me. Yes, miss. What can I get for you? White wine, please.
Coming right up. Yes.
And I'm hoping you can hear this. The lady is having a conversation with the robot and has ordered some white wine.
How was your day, miss?
Pretty good, thanks. Busy, lots of meetings.
Sounds like a really long day, miss.
I'm just going to fast forward a little bit here.
May I have your glass, please, miss?
Of course.
Thank you, miss.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I'll let the kids watch the whole thing, but just in the interest of keeping things moving along, I'll go pretty quick here. Let's see. I can pause, stop screen sharing. Okay. All right. So the kids see this video. A lot of times when the teachers see that, they're like, oh my God, we've gone too far. The robot looks big, it's intimidating. And I'll say this to the kids. Okay, you all said you can program this robot. Who can program that big robot? Who thinks you guys could do that? And at the elementary school, sometimes the kids are fairly confident. Middle school or high school, very, very few people think they could program the big robot. Then what I'll say to them is that big robot uses the exact same hardware and software as this little one. And so if you can program this guy, you can program this big guy. Today, right now, all of you told me you could do it, so all of you could do this. And it's not that you could grow these skills in 5 or 10 years. You could do that right now. Let's look at what this big robot did. He talked. Did you program your robot to talk? Yes, you did. He listened. Did you program your robot to listen? Yes, you did. He moved servos. Did you program your robot to move servos? Yes. It's the exact same way that you would program this big one. And at that moment, you can see the kids, like they're kind of mentally scrambled for a second, and then they're like, holy cow, I can do anything. And the difference that makes for these kids as they move through their education is huge, right? Could you imagine a class of 5th graders or 7th graders that know that they could do that level of robotics? How does that change the types of programs or options they take in high school? How does that change the careers they view themselves going into, right? What scares them in their educational career when they know they can do that? And that's such a huge part of what we do. And regardless of whatever product you're using or however you're teaching this, it's so critically important to let the kids know that they have the skills and talent, and then show them definitively how that relates to the real world. And when we do this, and we do this in the presentation, at the end of the presentation, if I say, who wants to learn robotics? 90% of the kids in the middle school put their hands up. You know, so we'll go from 3 or 4 kids thinking they might work with this in the future to 90 kids, or 90% of kids. So it's, you know, it's hugely, hugely valuable to do this. So then a big part of the question sometimes when I'm talking to principals, they'll say things like, okay, well, sure, robotics is important, but I don't have any teachers that'll teach it. And it's important as well that, you know, and I'm not sure what the level of it, you know, of robotics literacy or comfort is, or coding comfort is for the people that are on this presentation, but I want to let you know that everybody can do this. It's super, super easy. If I've demonstrated it to 18,000 kids and everybody can do it, every educator can do it. So what I say to the principals when they say that they'd love to do stuff like this, they just don't think they've got any teachers that'll do it, I'll say, let me talk to your teachers for an hour. And typically what I'll do when, you know, at a PD day, what I'll do is I'll let them know why it's so critically important, why every kid needs this. And then I will run the teachers through the exact same presentation as the kids. I'll get the teachers to volunteer to come and program the robot. And at the end of it, they're like, that was easy. And so, you know, at the end of it, usually there's 5 or 6 teachers that are excited to learn or to teach this. And often they end up, you know, fighting over who gets to teach it because it's just a lot of fun. So what I'd like to do is to show you a little bit about what we, you know, how we program the robot, so you can see how easy robotics is now, because I think a lot of times we still have this old world view of robotics and coding, and we think it's really tough. And, you know, a lot of times educators will ask, you know, do you have Blockly or Scratch, like a drag and drop type of a coding language? And the answer is yes. This platform has Scratch, Blockly, JavaScript, Python, C++. So you can teach drag and drop programming with this, but when we created our curriculum is text-based coding. And we did that because there was no Blockly interface in the software. But the interesting thing that we found is the kids are happy to learn that curriculum and do the text-based coding because the output is so cool, right? If the output of a project is making a robot follow a line, that's not a true organic output. Like within the curriculum, what we have is we teach the kids to program the robot to wave. We say, okay, now that you know how to make the robot wave, program 3 more moves. You know, and some of those moves should be things like make the robot stand on 1 foot. That's a much more difficult task and involves a lot of physics and balance and math, right? And it's not that the kids are sitting there with their calculator and stuff, but they're going, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Well, the robot didn't push enough weight over here. You didn't move the center of gravity over enough. They're just intrinsically learning things. I'm going to share my screen again with you. Hopefully this will allow me to share twice. Can you guys see my screen, Jordan?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I want to show you how we program movement with this robot because it's very cross-curricular. It's got a lot of math implications. If we want to program now, I guess Jordan, can you guys still see me as well, or just the screen?
Yeah, we can see you just above your screen, so it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's say I'm the robot and you want to program me to wave. We have to take that. This is what it might look like. Let's break that down and reverse engineer that movement. I started here. I put my hand up to here. Then it pivoted out. Then it pivoted back, then out, then back, then out, and then back down. So really what we have is 3 pivot points. We got a starting frame, a frame where my arm is up here, and a frame where my arm is out here. So we have to program those 3 things and then string those frames together in an action, kind of like how you would make an animation sequence. So to do that, I'm going to use my auto position tool, which is just over here on the left side. And I'm just going to click on these 3 little dots in the corner, which opens up a picture of my robot. And I'm going to click on the frame AA stand. That's what he's in right now. That's basically the robot standing. And I've called it AA just to push it to the top to speed up these presentations. So the frames could be named anything. Now you can see now that I've clicked on that, there's a whole bunch of boxes on the screen. Each of those boxes represents one of the servos or motors on the robot. The number inside is the angle that that servo is currently at. If we want the servo to move, we have to change the angle. And this is so powerful for kids, especially that are visually, spatially a little weak, because they're now taking 2-dimensional information and they're changing that into 3-dimensional, reality. And so the kids get really, kids that have got weak visual spatial skills build strong visual spatial skills. And that is so powerful and beneficial for math. It's like we work with somebody here who's a double doctorate in learning environment and math education. And I'm sure that there's other titles for that, but that's the gist of it. She says that when she uses this guy to tutor kids in math that are to tutor kids that are visually spatially weak, they go from weak to strong in just 1 week's time. And so, like, imagine this, for the sake of argument, looking at me again, imagine that I'm a robot and I put this servo up to a 45-degree angle, right? So this is 45 degrees. But now, if I pivot my shoulder servo, this is still a 45-degree angle, but it looks like a straight line from straight on, but it's still a 45-degree angle, and so is this. So this whole range, this whole cone that I can make over here on the right side is all created by a 45-degree angle if I pivot the axis. So the kids start to intrinsically understand this. I don't explain all of this when I'm teaching the kids to program the robot to wave, but that's what they're starting to build. So now I'm going to show you how easy it is to program this robot to wave. So we've already got the frame stand. I'm going to make a new frame. I'm going to call that AA Wave 1. Now that I've got the frame created, I can adjust the servos And I'm just going to drag this one that said 176, and you're going to notice my robot's moving its arm in real time. And this is the real-time feedback is a big part of the visual spatial skills growing, and it's a big part of engaging kids that might be a little ADD or ADHD. So what we found when we've taught kids that have concentration problems, when they have the robot in front of them, the output of the robot keeps them very, very focused. Right? If they were just doing this on the screen, you've moved the number, so what? But when they see the robot move in real time, it's great. The other nice thing is kids aren't afraid to experiment with this, right? There's no wrong answer. Sometimes when kids program this robot to wave, like they're pushing this part of the arm down, right? Like, I mean, what would break a human, but it doesn't hurt the robot. And so everybody's waves look different. There's no wrong answers. And that's really important because like, hey, I can experiment and I can do fun things. Okay, so I've got the first frame, the robot's got its arm in the air. I'm gonna make another new frame, wave 2. And what I'll say to the kids here is I'll say, okay, now, what servos do you think you would adjust to make the robot put his arm out? Looking at the picture, what servos do you think you would adjust? And usually they'll take a good guess and say, you know, the 145. And I'll say, I don't know, try it. And they'll go, okay, and then they'll try it and the robot will move. And then I'll just overextend its elbow the same way I told you some of the kids do, right? And then open the gripper up. Okay, so now my robot's gonna do a really big wave. So now I've got this frame, and this frame. I've got all the frames I need to create an action. Now I'm gonna click on the actions button at the top. And I know that I'm going relatively quickly, so if you're not picking it all up, that's okay. I'm happy to run through this slower with anybody in a one-on-one or talk to your school or whatever. This is really just trying to demonstrate what the capabilities are and how we teach it and how it leads to other STEM skills and how we're able to engage kids across the whole spectrum, because this really, to me, is the crux of the issue of what we need to do. Okay, so I'm on the action picture here, or the action window. I'm going to create a new action. I'm going to call it AA Wave. And now that I've done that, over here is a list of all the actions that I've already programmed into my demo project. And if the software looks intimidating, this is my demo project. When we start kids out, there's one window open and they start to learn movement, and then we open the camera, and then we open the other things. So it starts out simple. The robot can only bow and I think probably wave or something at the beginning of the class. Any other actions they want the robot to do, they have to program that. We don't want them to be users that can go do a push-up, do a push-up. We want them to program a push-up, right? So, but we show them what the robot can do to inspire them and make them go, I want my robot to do that. Okay, so I'm on the action wave. Here's a list of all the frames, and you can see that the ones that I just created are right here. So I'm going to highlight AA stand and click add. I could also double click and that would add it. So I'm going to add wave 1, wave 2, wave 1, wave 2, wave 1, wave 2, go back to stand. And you can see over here on the right side, we've got this list. This is my script. And like I said, we can do JavaScript, Python, like C++. We can do real world coding. We don't worry about that for movement. And in the real world, industrial robotics, for the latest thing is you position the robot with your hands and take a frame the same way we're doing here, or you're programming it like an interface like this. It's not a whole lot of typing and angles and stuff. It's a whole lot of real world manipulation. So this is our script here now. I'm going to hit save. And now on the auto position window down here on the left side, you can see there's my action. If I hit execute, this is what I programmed the robot to do. Now, as you can imagine, everybody can program that, right? There's nothing difficult about that. It took me 6 or 7 minutes to do it because I was doing a lot of explaining in there. That's a 3 or 4 minute process. When the kids see how easy it is, they build confidence, right? So now the kids have got the robot waving. I'm like, okay, let's add the robot. Let's make the robot talk while he's waving. So we go back into our auto position tool. You're going to notice the repetition here. We keep going in and we just keep adding on one layer. I'm going to click on actions. Here's the action AA wave. Now, if we look over here on the script, every frame, these are all frames, every frame on the right side says script false, script false, script false. You can add a whole lot of actual coding into any individual frame. So you can program very complex movements with this robot. So I'm going to go into the first time, or the first wave 2 here. I'm going to click edit, and I'm going to go in and edit a script in here. And this brought up my Python editor. I'm just going to use Blockly. Am I? Come on, Blockly. Okay, yeah. And then what I want my robot to do is to talk. So I'm going to click audio, and I'm going to click audio, say EZB. The EZB is the controller in the back. So when we say EZB, that means we want the sound to come out of the robot. We could also make it come out of the computer if we want, but this one's coming out of the robot. Say EZB, and you can notice here's a puzzle piece in the middle. The robot doesn't know what it's going to say yet. So I'm going to go text and click hello world. And I'm going to, hello world is the first thing that somebody got a computer to type on the screen. And so that's the native thing here. But we want the kids to personalize this. So I'll say, hello, Jordan, just for the sake of argument. Normally the kids that are doing this in the classroom, sometimes they'll come up with really like simple things like, you know, good afternoon, teacher, or teacher's name. Sometimes they'll say like, you know, me robot, me smash, I'm a robot, I come in peace. It's like whatever the kids want the robot to say, they're starting to put their personality into the robot. This is critically important because they're now emotionally connecting with the robot. We're building so many connections and bridges here because we're taking it from just being an engineering and technical process, and we're engaging the whole brain. So my robot's going to say, hello, Jordan. So I'll hit save, and I'll hit OK. And let's see, did that not click in there? 1 second. Come on, say, okay, save. All right, we'll give that a run and see if that works. That didn't behave exactly how I expected it to, but we'll see how it plays out. So I've got the AA wave action selected. I'll click execute, and we'll see if the robot will say it. Okay, so you guys couldn't hear that. I'm gonna hold this up to my microphone and do the same thing again. Execute.
Hello, Jordan.
Okay, so hopefully you heard it. It said, hello, Jordan. It said like this, hello, Jordan. But it didn't sound awesome, right? But the, you know, the robot still talked. And we can type it in. We can change the voice from a guy voice to a girl voice in the settings of the software. And that's pretty good, but it's not as good as our own voice. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to record our voice and have it come out the robot. And to do that, we're going to use the microphone tool, which is kind of towards the bottom right corner. And this is real simple. We just hit the record button and the stop button. So I'll do this. I'm a robot and I'm totally awesome. So hopefully you can hear the robot playing that back. So now I've got that clip. I'm going to export that to my soundboard. I'm going to call that I'm a robot. And you can see it over here on my soundboard. It says I'm a robot, and I can play this. Or I can build it into a sequence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build that into the waving robot. So again, I go back to my auto position, click on these 3 little dots to open up the settings, click on action. I'm going to go into the wave. I'm going to go into my script. And did I not hit that properly? I'm going to go into my script. I'm going to try to edit this. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to take the hello, Jordan, and I'm going to delete that. Now, what we want the robot to do is still audio. So I'm going to click on the audio. And instead of doing say EZB, this time I'm going to do play audio. And the song You Haunt Me, it would be one of the sound clips I have. Here's I'm a Robot. Remember the girl's voice singing happy birthday? Here it is down here. So I'm a robot. I'm going to hit save, hit OK, hit save again. And I am going to get the robot to say I'm a robot and I'm totally awesome.
I'm a robot.
Okay, so hopefully again everybody could hear that. Like these are the things that the kids are doing super, super fast. And you know, an important distinction I want to make here is don't look at this and go, well, that's not real robotics, because it is real robotics. It's just that robotics doesn't have to be tough all the time. So we're making the easy part, the things that can be made easy in robotics, easy. I just want to show you a script here. This is called the point and track script, right? So this is the kind of programming that the kids will do once they get more confidence and more talent. So we get into real world scripting. We just don't start the kids there. And I just want to draw a parallel to computers for a second. And again, no matter what product you're using, just understand this. We all know how important computer literacy is. But imagine if the first class in computer, in our computer education was, hi, welcome to, computer class. First thing I want everybody to do is to, turn your computers off, take out your screwdrivers, going to open these things up and see how computers are made. I want everybody to make a computer, right? But that's not important to most of us. But that's how we teach robotics a lot of times. It's certainly at the higher grades. It's let's build a powerful robot. That's like 3 or 4 rungs up the ladder. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that. That's awesome. But by starting 3 or 4 rungs up the ladder, we're missing out on all these kids. And we're doing all of these kids a disservice. We've got to start at the first rung of the ladder the same way we do with a computer. Like, okay, turn the computer on. What can you use a computer for? Well, you can play Minecraft. So let's play Minecraft for half an hour. Now here's what you could do. You could program Minecraft to, so that your character can fly. Go in there and put a hack in, right? Okay, now your character can fly. That's awesome. I wonder what else I could hack, right? Let's look at Excel. Now you can this is going to make doing your math easier. Let's look at Microsoft Word or Google Docs. This is going to make word processing easier. So you don't have to print out an essay. You can type it out. We all know the benefits of a computer. And we teach computer literacy by highlighting the benefits and helping the kids, reach those benefits. But we don't always teach robotics that way, right? And so, with the Dash robot, one of my favorite things I saw a school do was they had all of their grade, I think it was 3 and 4 students, competing in the Olympics. This was an Olympic year. They created a whole bunch of Olympic events. So Dash had his launcher and he was shooting a ball. And that was kind of like the cross-country skiing and then shooting the gun, the biathlon. They had 2 robots doing synchronized dancing or figure skating, right? And they had the whole opening ceremonies and all of the kids were doing different events. And that's how they learned their programming was the goal wasn't programming. The goal was the best biathlon robot possible. The process is learn programming and iterate until you get that process. It had luge going, it had everything. It was awesome, right? So this is not, I'm showcasing this robot. I think this robot is awesome, but I want you guys to understand that the principles that we're talking about here can certainly be applied to a lot of other products. Some things like visual tracking and speech recognition, other products don't have, but they can still name their robots. Like if they've got Dash, they can put a name on that robot. So it's not Robot 3. It's Sally or whatever. And I'm sure that a lot of you are doing that already, right? But this is an important part of it. And it's interesting as well. One of my favorite products for K-4 education is Cubelets. And that product is like the kids are building, it's almost like little bits, but bigger blocks. The kids are snapping or magnetically attaching big blocks and building robots. And that's really awesome in terms of the ability for kids to learn and iterate with their hands, right? Like, I love how Dash is really engaging, but I love how Cubelets allow kids to iterate with their hands. That's an advantage as well of Lego and Vex over top of standalone robot products. This product as well, you're looking at it in a humanoid form. It is a modular platform, so the kids can take it apart and put it together in other, strategies as well. It comes in, well, you saw the big life-size humanoid robot. That's kind of the high end. And there's actually a programmer a roboticist in Japan that built a Scarlett Johansson robot, which some people think that's creepy, some people think that's awesome. I'm not even going to comment on that because it doesn't matter for the purpose of this conversation. What matters is they got a whole lot of worldwide press for their $50,000 Scarlett Johansson robot. And at the base of their robot was the EZB controller, which is $79, right? To build a life-size humanoid robot with a controller that costs $79 is crazy, right? So robotics is not, it's not necessarily super expensive. It's not necessarily super difficult. These things can be affordable, you know, in schools. We've got a kit coming out. We're just working on the curriculum for it. It's an AI kit, and it's a controller, a camera, an LED board, and a button. And kids can like they push the button and it's going to take a picture of the person. And then, do I recognize this person? If yes, then the LED panel turns green or whatever. And then they can take the product, or take the camera and take a picture of a product, plug into Microsoft's artificial intelligence, their cognitive services, and go, what is this a picture of? Read this QR code, read this glyph. There's so many cool things that you can do there. That kit costs a total of $100, right? So lots of possibilities for low dollars to have really cool and engaging education. We've talked to people that have put together like an escape room type robotics solution where kids have to go in and solve technology problems to get into the box to get the prize, as opposed to getting out of the escape room. Again, really cool goals. The engineering and everything is just the process. Okay, I diverted a little bit there. I apologize. We've got the robot now waving, talking. We've got it. We've recorded our voice, and it's come out the robot. The next thing I want to teach is speech recognition. I just want to show you guys this tool because it's pretty cool. So on the left side of the screen are all the phrases my robot knows. And then beside it, the line of script that makes those phrases active. And like you'll notice here, the first thing that I said, and I show this to the kids because I want them to understand this is not magic. When they saw me say to the robot, JD, show me how strong you are, they were all like, oh my God, the robot understood him. That's unbelievable. No, it's a phrase. I typed in, JD, show me how strong you are. And when the robot hears that, I told it to do push-ups, right? Which is right over here. And then, JD, what else can you do? Do a headstand. If I had said to my robot, JD, can you do push-ups? He's not programmed to understand what that means, so he can't do anything. And this is the difference between like speech recognition with phrase matches and artificial intelligence. And again, we want to try to give kids that literacy. We want them to understand what artificial intelligence is and what it isn't. Because when you understand the technology, it's really easy to make things look like they're more robust and powerful than they might be. So we show the kids the phrase. You know, JD, can you sing happy birthday? Play audio track 7, and then audio track 7 is the girl singing happy birthday, and that activates the movements, right? So there's a few different layers in there. I'm going to show you how easy it is to program this robot. I'm going to pick on Jordan again. I'm going to call my robot Jordan and say, Jordan, wave to everyone. And then beside that, here's my script button. I'm going to just click on this. It'll take a second. I'm going to go into Blockly again. It defaulted to Python. I want my robot to do a movement. And I want my robot to use the auto position tool, and I want it to do the action AA wave. I could pick whatever I want. I'm going to do AA wave. I'm going to click save. So my command is Jordan wave to everyone. Hit save again. Speech recognition. Jordan wave to everyone. Right, so the kids are able to very quickly learn how to do a whole bunch of these simple things, and with a lot of times they don't think these things are simple, and with some platforms they're not, but in the real world now they are, right? So kids should not be intimidated by these things. And we can get this we could program this robot. I've got about 5 minutes left here. We could program this robot to track colors. Takes about a minute and a half. Recognizing an object takes about 3 minutes or 4 minutes. You know, like I mentioned, glyphs, QR codes. You can plug into Microsoft's AI. There's such a wide range of the type of education that you can bring. And, you know, I did an interview with a writer out of Australia about 5 years ago. And it was a really cool interview. He asked me, can your robot like do a soliloquy from Hamlet. Can you recite some lines from a Shakespeare play? And I said, sure. And I explained how you could do it. You guys saw, you would just say the lines in, to be or not to be, and then you can program an action around those lines, and it would all sync up perfectly. So I'm like, yeah, sure. I explained how you could do it. And he was like, that's incredible. Could your robot act opposite you in a scene? If you like in a play? And I'm like, sure. And I explained how that could happen. And, you know, you could use the speech recognition module and stuff. And then he said, could two robots act opposite each other in a scene? And I said, sure. And I explained the different ways that you could do that, because you could just program the two robots with the same piece of software to control multiple robots and have them choreographed. Or you could have it so this person says something and this person responds, you know, that type of a thing. And I said, man, you're asking some real specific questions. What are you angling towards? What are you trying to find out? And he said, I'm really trying to find a way to give some STEM to my humanities students, kids that love drama, art, literature. And I'm trying to find a way to give some arts to my STEM students. And I'm just like, that's perfect. That's the exact way we need to teach this, right? You know, if it's so important that we try to reach everybody. So again, no matter what product you have, if you're working with, you know, if you're an art teacher, man, bring your art to life. Make it three-dimensional, make it living, make it do things. You can make clothing now that will respond to music or voice or whatever. You can make smart clothes. What a great way to get a fashion designer interested in this. And in fact, in my other presentation, I talk about how the two most important skills to get hired as a fashion designer, 3D printing and robotics. People don't think of those things when, you know, little Johnny or Sally says, I want to be a fashion designer. We don't necessarily think, well, you better get down to the computer lab and get into the 3D printing lab or the maker space. We just think you're going to need to draw, you'll need resilience, you know, you're going to have to be creative, flair, good sense of color, risk taker. All of those things are still true, but now there's a layer of technical knowledge that we have to get to these kids as well. And so within education, it's really awesome if we can find a way to try to infuse those things. And, you know, in terms of if you were trying to build fashion and put technology into it, we've got LED lights and a controller. The controller's $25. The LED lights are a few dollars. And all of a sudden, your shirt can respond to speech recognition. And kids in elementary or middle school or high school could be making that today and starting to fuse those things together. It's so critically important we do this. So I can see I'm down to a couple minutes of time here. So I do want to take your questions and you know, answer anything that you might have. So Jordan, do we have any people that have submitted questions at this point?
No, I at this point, I think they've been really captivated by your presentation. But I do want to offer at this time, if you want to have conversations, questions with Dennis, you're more than willing to do so at this time. Kind of some finishing remarks too, while we're also waiting for people to write their questions down. I did want to thank everybody today for joining us, and also Dennis for presenting. My name is Jordan Nelson. I'm one of the customer engagement managers with Nasco. I was one of the hosts, and thank you for everybody for joining us. If you have any questions, you can ask them at this time. Like I said, if you're writing them, you can connect with Nasco outside of this webinar as well, also with Dennis. You can feel free to reach out to me at engage@nascoeducation.com. I'm going to put that into the chat features here, so then that way anybody else needs to get a hold of us. Here, hold on a sec. One question just did pop up, Dennis.
Okay.
How much is a basic classroom set of the robots?
Okay, so a classroom set includes 15 robots. It's 5 of these guys, and 5 spiders. It includes free training, or training's included there, and it includes a curriculum. The curriculum is 40 hours of education. It takes kids from zero knowledge all the way up to what I would consider to be robotics literacy, and they're coding to the point where they're understanding variables and doing if-else statements. So it's a pretty good introduction. That's 40 hours of education time. The cost on that package is $9,000. One thing I do want to stress is anybody that picks up even a single robot, we're going to give you a couple hours of training for free, and that's usually all it takes. And you guys saw how easy the software was. We're going to throw in some free training because the last thing we want is the robot sitting on a shelf and not being used. So even if you just buy one robot, we're going to give you a couple hours for free. And we're also going to, our training isn't just here's how to operate the robot. It's here's how to run a robotics program in a classroom, right? So this platform is simple enough that kids can use it as young as, or the kids as young as second grade can learn it without any problem. But from a classroom management perspective, it would be tricky in a second grade. So we recommend this for grades 4 and up. And that's because, I've taught after school programs with second graders. They learn it, they love it, but 30 kids with 15 robots would be a lot. In grade 4, it's still a lot. The first couple classes are chaos a little bit, but after the kids understand the basic parameters of how the software works, it just settles down and there's incredible learning that happens. And the curriculum, I want to talk about that a little bit more as well, was when we were writing our curriculum, we debated between, do we go to a professor at Carnegie Mellon and end up with a really powerful, respected curriculum? And we decided that what would happen then is we would end up at this end of the spectrum. And because it's more, I believe it's more important to reach this end of the spectrum right now. That's really where there's a gap and what the kids need. We went with a social studies curriculum writer that had zero knowledge of technology. Now, that took me many hours over a year because I had to train this social studies teacher and curriculum writer on robotics and technology and stuff. And then she could put it into the curriculum. And it was really interesting the number of times we had debates. And she'd be like, whoa, none of this makes any sense. And I'd be like, it makes total sense. It's exactly what we were doing yesterday, and we've just added this one little notch. So we'd go back and forth for a couple hours until eventually I realized I actually gave her 3 new concepts. I thought 1, but there were actually 3 in there. So what we've got right now is a real great self-directed curriculum that any teacher can teach, any kid can learn, written to a grade 7 reading level, used as low as 4th grade. And yeah, everybody can have success with it. We were looking for a systemic solution, so that's why we went that route. Now, I'm completely transparent about these things. In a high school setting, there's going to be some lessons in there. You're going to be like, oh, my kids are beyond this. They won't want to do this. But there's still a lot of great things in there. There's lessons on binary number systems. There's lessons on morals and ethics, because I don't want to just teach people how to work a robot. I want them to understand and think about whether they should. And I think that's going to become so important over the next decade, right? There's going to be a lot of things that we can do. Some of those we probably shouldn't do, but it's important, it's important that everybody has a voice and an understanding of what's coming. I don't want society to be created by a couple of people, that are creating, without any constraints because the legislators don't understand this. Looking forward 5 or 10 years, and really as quickly as now, it's really important that our educational, or that our leaders, our political leaders, our educational leaders, that they all understand robotics and artificial intelligence, what it is, what it can do, what the risks are, what the threats are, what the incredible opportunities are, because what we're creating is super powerful and impactful. We just have to make sure that people understand it, so we're using it to the best possible, benefit for mankind. And to me, this is another great reason why we want to get these people engaged in this, because we don't, at least my goal is to have all of humanity present at the decision-making table when we decide what we should do with artificial intelligence. And a great way I love to talk about this is with the kids, is I'll talk about robotic prosthetics. This is one of my favorite conversations with the kids because it turns the table so fast. I'm like, okay, imagine I got my hand cut off, or your parents got their hand amputated in an accident. And so now they can't, they've only got this hand to help you and do things and stuff. If they could get a robotic hand that they can control with their brain, who thinks that's a good idea? Everybody thinks it's good to have a robotic hand. I'm like, okay, what happens if I lost my arm at the elbow here? And I got a robotic forearm and hand? Still a good thing? Yes. okay, what happens if I've got hydraulics in here that are 50 times stronger than your arm? And I've got hydraulics in here that are 50 times stronger than your hand. And now if I wanted to, I could crush rocks as easily as you crush a tin can. Is that still a good idea? And all of a sudden the kids are like, wait a second, I'm disadvantaged now. Now you have an advantage over me. I don't like that. I'm at risk. And then I'm like, well, what happens if I really love my right robotic arm and I decide to cut my arm off and get a left robotic arm as well? And this one, everybody thinks is absolutely wrong. So from here to here, everything changed. Those are the kind of discussions our kids need to be having. You know, the ways that it's important to understand the different ways that people look at robotics and technology. Over here, life-size humanoid robot, a little bit creepy for a lot of people. In Japan, everything has a soul, not creepy at all, right? So there's so many different changes that are coming, and they're going to come so fast. It's really critical that we try to get this education to as many kids as possible so that we have as broad a view of humanity as we navigate our way through it. That was a really long answer to say a classroom set is 9,000. I apologize. This robot here is 550 himself. There are solutions as low as $99 as well, but that was a really long answer, but that's what I did.
That's okay, Des. Well, thank you. We did have another question. How is the software delivery for this? Is it online based, or do you have to download software on different devices?
You have to download it. And what I would tell you is if you're in a high school setting, the best experience, the most robust experience is on a PC. And so you download the software, it's on your PC, and the kids hook up via Wi-Fi. It is possible to control them remotely. So, you know, we could give Jordan access to this robot and he could program it from where he is. From a classroom management perspective, that would be tricky. It's been done. We've got clients that have taught these robots during COVID. It's an extra layer of challenge. And so, yeah, then you can also program the robots and use them with iPads and tablets. It's just a more streamed down version. You can still program, you know, using Scratch or Blockly and program powerful things. You're just not building a robust robot personality, which is one of the things the kids love to do. I'm going to program my robot to kick a soccer ball and shoot hoops and dance the Macarena, whatever it might be. You're not doing as much of that on the tablet. So tablets are great for elementary, okay for middle school, but really where the magic happens in terms of the power of this platform is on a PC. And a lot of people then say, well, what about a Chromebook? And what happens is this guy, the competitors to this guy are between $2,500 and $10,000 each, and he's $550. Part of the reason for that is the processing is split between the computer and the robot. So when I say the controller is $79, that's because it's also using the processor in your phone or a tablet or the computer.
Great questions. I don't think I see any more questions that come in through here. We do have one individual that we're going to follow up with after this session that's going to want some professional development and some training. They recently bought a robot. So any other questions, feel free to write them down. Otherwise, like I said, I did put some information into the chat box. Engage@nascoeducation.com is a way to be able to reach us outside of this webinar. The next webinar, if you are interested, I did put a link in there to if you are interested in the next session of this. And then I also put a link in there to the products as well, in case you are interested in some of that. So any other questions that we have? Any last remarks that maybe you want to give, Dennis, before we say goodnight to everybody? No? Okay. All right. Well, I think thank you all for coming, and thank you all for attending this webinar. You guys have a great night and stay. I'm glad we had this opportunity to meet with Dennis and talk a little bit about robotics, artificial intelligence, the impact it has on education today. and learned a little bit also about the impact that it's also having. So take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Dennis.
Bye.